I tell myself to fail fast in points where uh, there needs to be change. There's a problem that needs to be solved, and it isn't business as usual. There's an incredible amount of knowledge that you can gain in those situations. Um, so as those roll towards you, or the ball rolls your way, you got to pick it up and run with it. And while you're in that instance, you don't necessarily think it's the best job in the world, but a couple months, a couple years afterwards, when you go and you look back at those types of situations and the people that you were around while you were solving those types of issues, that were all hands-on deck type situations. Anywhere you can throw your hat in the ring when stuff like that comes up, do it, because there is more knowledge there than you know, right?
Welcome to the Modern Biopharma Podcast. The world of today's medicines is big, complex, and constantly changing. Our goal is to give you insight into the people that are manufacturing the medicines people need every day, whether it is the people taking care of these facilities, or those building them, or those maintaining the quality and integrity of every dose that is delivered to the patient. We interview the people that are making it happen and give you a chance to get to know them while we're at it. Thanks for saying hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Biopharma Podcast. I am here today with Joe Reale of Repligen out of Waltham, Massachusetts. How are you doing today, Joe?
Great, Jesse. How about yourself?
I am doing well. It's weather's turned. We're not in rain anymore, so I'm happy about that. And I am still at my home office, not going anywhere. You, however, are not. Where are you at today?
I am at Repligen's corporate headquarters in Waltham, Massachusetts today.
Okay.
Making sure to stick to our social distancing, but operations need to keep moving to support our critical supply chain. So we do what we need to, and try to do it with a smile on our face.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, just to sort of see how you're dealing with that in your role there and other sites. But could you just give us a little background on who you are? What your personal life's like you married, kids, maybe where your role is there at Repligen as well.
Sure thing. I live in South Boston with my wife and 6-month-old son. So I got my hands full at work right now, and I have my hands full at home for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to be a little bit of a menace, but they say the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So
Yeah.
I'm getting what I deserve there, But yeah, I've been working at Repligen. I've been in either life sciences or biotech my whole career. When I was in undergrad, I got a chemical engineering degree from University of Massachusetts. I was a student athlete there. And then I got my master's in engineering management at Tufts. So, that kind of projected me into that life sciences biotech industry. And, I've just been cranking through since.
Awesome. Hey, just something random. In our industry, I see a ton of people in the Northeast, from like Northeastern and UMass Lowell, and say Worcester Polytech, and then maybe Maritime Academy. So you went to UMass Amherst, right? Is that what you just said?
Correct. Yep. UMass Amherst, the zoo, or the flagship they're calling it now.
Yeah. So is there a lot of people from that school in our industry? I just personally haven't been exposed to many, so I'm curious if you've come across a lot.
Yeah, so their chemical engineering program, their engineering program overall is well known, and there's a lot of folks in the biotech industry there for sure. I mean, just here at Repligen, I think I employ 3 or 4 engineers with Chem-E degrees from UMass.
Okay.
They also, like UMass Lowell, have an extensive polymer science program as well. So when I was in the medical device industry, there's a lot of folks that go that pathway as well. But process engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering from that school are do very well, and especially the folks that I've hired. As an alum, I got a lot of pride hiring those folks, but they do a great job for me. I mean, they compete with, I have folks that are from MIT, that are from Harvard, that are from the WPIs and Northeasterns of the world. And it's everybody's got a role, and those degrees apply wherever you're putting them.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that's good. That's good to know. We all have different backgrounds from education perspective. And I know, we try to have just sort of our finger on the pulse of what's going on and where people are coming from, what degree programs are feeding our industry well. And I'm just not personally aware of UMass Amherst. So that's good to know. All right. So I want to get into a number of things today real quick with you. But first off, I want to just start with your role there at Repligen in the COVID-19 response. There's been, obviously our world's totally different than it was a month ago. And your role there at Repligen, you work with a number of facilities and you're on a team there. So could you speak to what that is like right now for you and what it's been like for the company and how they've responded and how they're supporting the, ultimately the end product and your customer, all at the same time supporting your employees?
Sure. So my role here on a day-to-day basis is I'm the Senior Director of Technical Operations. So I'm overseeing operations here at our corporate site, but realistically I have engineers and technical folks at all of our sites around the world, whether it's Europe or here in North America. And we'll support all of our products. We have a wide variety of product lines and those support a wide variety of customer products, whether that be vaccines, therapeutics, or even tools that go into the filtration or purification of those processes, right? So I'm recruiting engineers. I realistically say, you have to be the Heinz Ward of engineering. You have to be good at everything and nothing, right? You got to do a lot of jobs. And it's great. It's great for young folks to come in here and learn a lot of different stuff. But as part of an operations leader, naturally, it was my role to look into disaster recovery for those different sites around the planet, right? What do we have to do to make sure that we have the appropriate mitigation in place for our customers, our people, and then the supply chain in which we support. So naturally, any type of natural disaster or disaster recovery falls under my umbrella. So when this pandemic came across, I was the one forming the global team and leading that effort, especially here in North America, from a response standpoint, right? So we, just like the government does, we formed a COVID-19 task force. We have to focus on critical attributes of that, not only the products that are going out the door, but realistically, we need to focus on the safety of our people and the comfort of our people, right? So, that's a big challenge when you're dealing with, somewhere from 800 to 1,000 folks. There are people behind there. Their levels of fear and anxiety associated with these situations are going to be variable, and you need to be able to react to all of those as well, right? So it's people, process, product type situation that we need to attack it from those three different ends.
Yeah. So one of the things I find interesting, I'm fortunate, you're fortunate in many regards where we could, we can go home and do some of our job at a home office potentially, right? And that's great. And it's obviously in a situation like this, it's maybe comforting to be able to just do your job from home. But a lot of people have to keep going in, and maybe they're leaving people at home. Maybe their kids are home from school and they're trying to juggle that. So I'm just curious, in your role, like, how's it been dealing with that? Like, how have the people in your company responded to that?
Yeah, so since day one, when this thing was still in China and not even in the US, we got a head start on this immediately, right? So we started to approach it and say, how will this impact us from a disaster recovery standpoint? It's pretty evident to our leadership that it could be a potential, at a minimum, hindrance to our supply chain, right, with shipping and receiving, because we do support Asia. So we needed to start thinking about it. I don't think anybody thought it would be as big as it is right now and have the impact that it did right now. But I'm very glad that we got a jump start, right? So initially, we had to define what we thought could potentially happen, from a worst case all the way through, nothing, to make sure that we weren't overreacting. And that being said, we put a plan together. There were different stages based on what the risk was. And basically now we're in the highest stage of that plan. And we've executed, dozens of programs to make sure that folks, again, not only are safe, but they feel safe in their work environment. And we've made it an effort to every site we have where we have essential personnel, because we were deemed essential personnel by Homeland Security because of the supply chain that we support. We've put programs in place, increased hygiene, making sure there's hand sanitizer, proper PPE. If you see right here, I'm actually wearing a mask around a lanyard. We have programs in place where you're getting your temperature taken when you walk in. And then we also have mitigation plans on the back end for, it's most likely not if, but when there's a positive COVID-19 case on one of our sites. We've had preliminary shutdowns. We've gone through it in sort of a fire drill fashion. So I like to think that we are very much prepared, not only to prevent spread at our sites, but also if it indeed does happen, that it's not a panic type situation, that we're prepared to react accordingly as well.
All right, that's great. So let's talk a little bit more about what you do there at Repligen and what you guys do as a company. So you came previously. I met you when you were younger, and when I was younger, I didn't have any gray in my beard at the time, and you had more hair on your head at the time at Genzyme, and so you were more on the manufacturing side of the product, right? Back then, and now you've moved over to Repligen, and it's more of bioprocessing equipment. You talk a little bit more about what you guys do, what makes it maybe special, different, and how this sort of change in the marketplace has actually made what you guys do more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at Genzyme, I supported the manufacture of rare disease medications, so monoclonal antibodies. And there, when we were trying to make next generation therapies, we were looking into Repligen specifically to use some of their products. So realistically, I was a customer of Repligen before I was an employee. And that made it a natural transition to jump onto the processing side to figure out not only how can we develop and bring tools to market to allow companies like Genzyme to, one, make new therapies and be innovative, two, be quick to market, right? And that's a big reason why we're part of that COVID-19 response we were just talking about, is making that process faster. And then there's the piece of making it cheaper as well, right? A lot of our products are single use. They allow for to be used as consumables or capital type equipment if you want, depending on the scale. And it ranges, vastly from filter products, right? There's cross-flow filtration, there's hollow fiber filtration. We have devices that are used for cell retention. We also have purification. The Opus columns are a purification product that I oversee the manufacturing here in the US, and we're looking to expand into Europe as well this year. And then we also are the world's biggest supplier of protein A, right? So any type of chromatography protein A resin, we typically are doing the ligand manufacturing, which is a very similar process to what our customers have. We have a 3,000 liter bioreactor out back. And then we will make those ligands and distribute them to the big resin manufacturers so they can distribute those to drug manufacturers as well.
All right, cool. So you got to sort of, again, like you said, you were a customer before you were working for them. So have you seen the marketplace change a lot you're not as old as some of my other guests that have seen the market change a lot, as they over 30 years. So have you seen it change much in the last, say, 10 or 15 years?
I've absolutely seen a change, right? Especially with the spike in gene therapy that's just come on. So gene therapy, 20 years ago had its run, and it didn't make it through the gauntlet of scrutiny, and they weren't able to effectively bring some of those products to market. And now the second time around, it's looking very promising because we are working with some of those smaller type manufacturers, in addition to the big pharma and big biotech in the world, we get to see a lot of different applications that are just not only super innovative, interesting, but it's amazing how quickly they're using our products to get to market, right? It's the speed in which you're able to do things now is much different from when I started, and even when I look back 10 years ago. So that's one significant change. And then the other piece is, again, it falls back on innovation and people using products like ours, but taking that innovation and extrapolating it out, right, and kind of going backwards. So we'd scale up a lot of the time. 10 years ago, all these bioreactors were getting bigger, and now we're going the other way with continuous processing and some other key technologies to actually scale some of that process down to make some of these facilities smaller, the footprint smaller, and really make drug manufacturing a little bit more of a greener footprint, which is something that I would have 10 years ago never, ever said in the same sentence, right? So we're being a little more cautious of the environment, and I see a lot of companies doing that as well.
So that's interesting that you say that. And can you describe something specifically and what that really looks like? I mean, you kind of were in more general terms there. Like, so you have access into a lot of these processes and seeing your customer base from the really small guys, say like the Cambridge-based type places that are doing pilot plants, to a lot of bigger guys that have, 20,000 liter bioreactors and things like that. So you have the full spectrum of customer base there. So how are you seeing that specifically happen at some of these customers, especially the big guys that are maybe scaling down?
Well, it's funny. The big guys have more red tape, Jesse, right? So when I think about, to put it into perspective, my career here over the last 4 years, and realistically my first year here at Repligen, I probably did more in that first year than I did my 7 previous years at Genzyme, right? And there were only a few things that made that happen. One was, we're ISO 9001 instead of CGMP, right? So we're not regulated by the FDA, we're regulated by ISO 9001. So being able to adhere to those standards removes some of that red tape and allows you to move much quicker from a development standpoint. And then the other one is the size that we kind of talked about, where you're dealing with customers who sometimes are working out of an MIT lab or a garage or somebody down at Duke, who has this super innovative and thoughtful way of changing a process. And because they're in that R&D environment, we're able to assist them not only from a product standpoint, but from an application standpoint. And what allows us to do that is data, right? So again, I'll fall back on the chromatography, the Opus chromatography discussion that we had. So when I was at Genzyme, we would pack, 5 or 6 columns annually for a couple of products, right? Here at Repligen, from a large-scale chromatography standpoint, I will pack 40 large-scale columns in 1 week, never mind a year, right? So the expertise, when 10 years ago, when I was in that biotech realm, everybody would say, packing columns is more of an art than a science, Joe. We'd kind of be sitting there crossing our fingers and saying, I hope this goes well, because we don't do it enough, right? We've now been able to take that data at Repligen and perform these operations so much more often that we're extrapolating that out, and it is now a science again, right? And with some of those smaller customers, we're able to provide that data to help them make decisions from an application standpoint, right? And now it's even correlating to some of those large customers that say, all right, Repligen, we want this, 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 and this. And we'll say, listen, we'll build you that custom product and give you whatever you want. But our data shows that you really might need this, and this is how it could impact your process. So being able to share some of that data that a lot of those companies don't have, because we're collecting it all in one database, has been one, very interesting to be able to share, but two, it's allowed us to really change the way that you're evaluating some of these processes, especially in the development stages.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm clear, and if somebody's listening to this, they're clear. So when you say, when you were back at Genzyme, you were doing 4 columns a year, versus now you're doing, what, say 40 in a week, that we just said?
Correct.
Okay, so, and what you're getting at is, because you guys make the columns, you pack the columns for the customers, you're able to just really understand and know this process so much better than even a large manufacturer, which, if there was one place where they would be able to do this, it would be a large manufacturer, right? Because they have the most reps, the little guys don't have any. You're able to just get so much more advanced in understanding the process because you're doing it many, many, many times a week, and they're only doing it, even the big guys, just a few times a year.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, chromatography columns alone, I can say that there's no question we pack more than anybody else on planet Earth, right? So for us not to take all that data and massage it into knowledge, not only for us, but for our customer, would be crazy. And because we've improved our manufacturing ability and also the ability to collect that data on a digital platform, which a lot of our customers are doing as well, right? Big data is now starting to come into biotech and pharma and life sciences to help us make some of these decisions. That's a huge change that I'm starting to see at our customer level and also at the supplier level as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's the world of specialization. It's just the way it is, right? And I think that's a really neat thing that you're able to do, and be able to just show a customer how much more advanced you could be as a result. I still haven't learned that in my own personal life. I always try to do silly projects at home, and I really should just leave it to the guy that does it all week instead of taking a year and a half to do the thing that would take 2 days. Maybe I'll learn it one of these days.
I hear
you. Yeah.
You say that, and so does my wife, as she's yelling at me as I'm doing projects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have nothing else to do with your life, right? So I have a couple of these questions that we just sort of cover a lot of them as you answer them. But as you look out onto the landscape, it doesn't need to be what you guys do, but what's something that you're excited about in the industry as you look out and see maybe new medicines coming along, new processes coming along, new things that you guys, sort of have your fingers in as a company? What's something that you're excited about?
I'll tell you, it's got to be that gene therapy platform that I talked about. We are working with a significant amount of gene therapy customers across several different product categories that we have, and helping them advance quickly, like I spoke about. But the thought of monoclonal antibody manufacturing, which I did for a long time, and having to give somebody that monoclonal antibody for the rest of their life to keep them alive or to keep them in a state of health which they wish to be in. With gene therapy and the ability to take 1 or 2 instances of a shot or a vaccine or that separate type of therapy and be cured for the rest of your life is something that is not only extraordinary, it's going to be a challenge, I think, as we look from an insurance standpoint as well on how to price some of these. And there'll be a struggle going on there. The technology alone is just so fascinating, and it's how quickly it's moving, and the impact that I think it's going to have over the next 5 years is just incredible. And if I was a young engineer or a young person that wanted to go into biotech, that would be the role that I would want to jump in right now from a development standpoint, and knowing what type of impact you're going to have on the back end, saving people's lives.
Yeah, I there was a presentation at the ISPE CASA event that I went to a month ago down in North Carolina, and they did a whole presentation on cell and gene therapy, and it was fascinating to me. My whole world has mostly been on the utility side, so I don't necessarily know the process as much. I'm excited about having some other guests on here that maybe are specialists in some of this to see what they have to say. But when they talk about the cost, some of these sort of older versions of therapies, they cost more in the long run, like over the course of a life, but it's never that one hit where some of these things are priced at $1 million, $800,000 for a shot, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that does play out over the next few years. So I have one last question for you, and you may have already answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So if you were to be able to go back 10 years and offer yourself one piece of advice in regards to your career and work in this industry, what would you tell yourself?
I guess I'd tell myself to fail fast. So when I look back at my career and some of the most pivotal points or transformational points that I've gone through, there are instances like this COVID-19 response, right? So in points where there needs to be change, there's a problem that needs to be solved, and it isn't business as usual, there's an incredible amount of knowledge that you can gain in those situations. So as those roll towards you, or the ball rolls your way, you got to pick it up and run with it. And while you're in that instance, you don't necessarily think it's the best job in the world, but a couple months, a couple years afterwards, when you go and you look back at those types of situations and the people that you were around while you were solving those types of issues, that were all hands-on deck type situations. Anywhere you can throw your hat in the ring when stuff like that comes up, do it, because there is more knowledge there than you know, right? So it's not something that everybody always signs themselves up for, but if I was looking back, I could see a few of those that I missed out on, that if I could go back again, I would dive right into that head first.
Yeah, it's, I think you have a background in sports, right? And if there was a training ground where you can take that, that's it, right? You're always in it. If you're not in it, then you're on the bench, right? And sometimes it's hard to apply that to our professional life because it just seems like work or, something that's hard and it's uncomfortable. But it's obvious to me that you've been able to do that enough because you've been very successful and you just keep on, doing good things and making positive impact. So thank you so much for being on today, Joe. I appreciate it. I know this is time out of your day. You got a lot of things going on in your life, but I do appreciate this. And I hope that, maybe even just saying some of this stuff out loud is good for you to, hear yourself say and believe. And I'll be sharing this with as many people as I can on LinkedIn, Twitter, and whatnot. So I look forward to hanging out and talking with you again in the future.
That was great. Thanks a lot, Jesse.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks again for listening to the Modern Biopharma Podcast. Please reach out if there is someone you'd like us to interview or a topic you'd like us to discuss. We will make it happen. And don't forget to like us on iTunes or subscribe on YouTube. It helps us get the word out. See you next time.